Hi guys, firstly I want to do a small disclaimer. I'm going to be talking a lot about blood and medical stuff in this video, so if that's not your thing, then I would probably turn off now. So, I have spent a lot of time in hospital this year and it's been a really horrible year. Sorry, I'm filming from my bed, but I'm so exhausted that I spend about 90% of my time here at the minute. If I'm not here, I'm on my sofa. So, the reason why I have spent time in hospital this year. Well, as you all know, I have a heart and lung condition. In 2011, I think, I suffered a small stroke and they started me on blood thinners. So, since Christmas, I hadn't been feeling great, and this was now March, and I had a bit of a cough and some blood came up. Now, this isn't a new thing for me, it's happened before, and I've been told if it's a lot of blood, you need to get seen. But it was just a little bit of blood. Called my GP, they said, come in, we'll have a listen, see for any infection, blah blah blah. So I went and seen the GP, they listened in, checked all my vitals, everything looked fine. But because of my complex heart and lung condition and because I hadn't been feeling very well, they decided to start me on some antibiotics, which was fine. The next day, however, I had quite a bad cough and quite a lot of blood came up. So I decided that I would probably have to go to the hospital. So I drove myself to A&E in Inverness, and I was taken quite quickly, and I had a chest x-ray and bloods taken and all the usual palaver that goes on. The x-ray didn't show anything significant, but they said that if it's a infection deep down in the lung, sometimes x-rays don't show it. So they spoke to the consultant who decided they would admit me and wait and see if we got 48 hours blood free, that's fine, I could go home. So on day 4, I think it was, I had more of a cough and quite a lot of blood came up, and I got quite a fright then. But they were like, it's fine, it's not a lot, we've seen worse than this, blah blah blah. 2 days later, it would have been the 48 hours. And I think I was like half an hour off 48 hours and I had quite a big bleed. And this, I think, scared everyone there because they weren't that well equipped to deal with it. So the decision was taken to move me to Glasgow, where the specialist teams were and where, if I needed any intervention or anything, that they could do there. So that was fine. But it meant a 4.5 hour journey in the back of an ambulance, and they couldn't blue light me because it wasn't actually an emergency. So it was quite a horrific journey. And yeah, but I got there. So Glasgow, we were fine. We'll wait and see, keep an eye on it. Hopefully you're on antibiotics. They thought it was from an infection. So we were quite hopeful that if we got on top of the infection, we got on top of the coughing up the blood. Now in Inverness, they had done a CT scan, which had been pretty good, and it showed an area of where the bleeding was coming from, but not the exact pinpoint. So I had been in Glasgow for a few days, and I woke up in the morning. My parents were literally about to board a plane to go on holiday, and I had a massive hemoptysis, so bleeding off the lungs, and I coughed up quite a lot of blood. And I looked up and they had called the crash team, who were all around my bed, and it was quite scary. They called my parents and to tell them, you've got to come in, don't get on that plane, this is serious. They couldn't get in touch with my partner because he was away, but we did eventually manage to get in touch with him. I was rushed into high dependency and I was kept there for just over a week. The decision was taken not to operate because of the complexity of my lungs, so they started me on some medication instead, and thankfully it did the trick. So I was kept in there, and while I was down there, I actually suffered a little stroke, which at the time we thought was just a little funny turn. It transpires that actually it was a stroke. But, that was one of the risks of stopping the blood thinners, but they had to stop the blood thinners because we had to give my lung a chance to stop bleeding. It's so complicated. So I was kept in for another 2 weeks, so it was almost a month in total. And then I went back to my parents for a couple of weeks R&R, because I couldn't even walk the length of myself. I was absolutely exhausted. In this meantime, Steve had moved us to the island, and he did a fantastic job. He packed everything up and he got everything moved, and he just was fantastic. So I then met him. I came over after a few weeks at my parents and joined him here in Arran. Fine, but I still nowhere near recovered. I had a meeting with my cardiologist, and I was telling her I still have pain in my lung. I'm still so tired. She said, you've got a massive bruise in your lung. You're going to be like this for a very long time. So I'm recovering at home, doing nothing because I was not allowed to do anything. Woke up 2 weeks ago and my right arm felt like rubber. It was like I had a fake rubber arm. It wasn't doing what I told it. I couldn't put any weight on it. It was so weak. My leg felt weak. So we went down to the hospital and they were fab straight through. We got a helicopter. That was quite exciting in the grand scheme of things. I was choppered off the island to the hospital on the mainland, straight in, cannot fault the system at all, straight into the CT scanner. They scanned my head, and then they really wanted to start me back on some kind of blood thinner because it had been 2 strokes I'd had during the night. So they started me on aspirin, I think, at the beginning because of obviously the bleed. They had to make sure they got the right whatever. Anyway, I had an MRI the next morning which did actually show the 2 strokes, and it had obviously shown the stroke which I'd previously had in the hospital. So yeah, I was kept in there for over a week to try and get my INR levels back in sync. We got them back, came back over here, they've gone back out of sync. So I'm basically in a sort of every 2-day check to see where they are at and trying to get them back in line with what they want, because they've tightened the perimeter on that due to the bleed, due to the stroke. I'm kind of in a catch-22 situation, and I am absolutely knackered. I've never been this exhausted. I mean, I know exhaustion from my heart condition, but this is exhaustion on top of exhaustion. So I just wanted to give you that little insight of how my year's going. Swimmingly! But hopefully we're on the other side of it all and I can start to pick myself up from here on in. So if you've liked this video, I don't know if you could like a video like this, or if you've enjoyed hearing it, watching it, give me a wee subscribe because that would really cheer me up. And yeah, I'll catch you all later. Okay, bye.